o'clock, we will call to order the February 20th, 2025 meeting of the Economic Development Authority. I will look for the approval of the February 20th agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Todd,
Second.
second by Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'd be looking for a motion to approve the January 16th County EDA meeting minutes that were in your packet.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And another, whoops, yeah, no. All right, I guess we're on to the Sherburne County Planning and Zoning. You gonna do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
I thought we had another, minutes to approve in there.
I don't think so. We had a quorum last time, so we would have approved all the minutes, yeah.
All right, here's Mitch.
There we go. So I'll just kind of give an overview of the 2024 reports that we had for housing and permits and so forth. We will at the end get over some of the ordinances that we implemented and are working on. So right now the update is that our new permitting system, it's been about a year since we've launched it. Feedback has been positive from the contractors. They do it regularly. Challenges from the general public. That's understandable. They only submit a permit once in their time here, and contractors are doing it regularly, so they'll get used to it. Fortunately, Cheryl's retiring today, so that's a bummer because we have new people.
Yeah, we need a moment.
We're all learning this together, but
Let's stop it and say goodbye if you get a chance.
She's been a wonderful employee.
yeah, she's gonna, I don't know if we can replace her, but
You can.
we'll try. Thanks, Ken. But it's been overall, it's been good. It's been good for the people that, even though it might be a little challenge at first, it's good for people that live further away. They don't have to come into the county. Everything's electronic, so that is good for the ease of doing business.
Mitch, is there anything that we could do to make it more user-friendly, or is it just because they don't do it often?
I think it's just the fact that they'll submit one permit for a basement and they're, and they're not used to it. They're not, I think it's the stuff they have to input, the verbiage. But they'll call in and we'll walk them through it. But yeah, it's the contractors that do it regularly, but.
Do we happen to have a link you can click on for like a video walkthrough?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have that?
Yeah, Carrie had
opportunity?
done that, a YouTube
perfect.
video. But, the website for the county is, you gotta get to it, then, it's getting to it is the difficult
It's
part
the
too,
layers
so.
of clicks.
Yep. Here's our population report. Where are we at now? Townships, 44,000, cities, 60,000, so, we're at the 105,000 population. Platted, unplatted. Platted lots in the township, 55. Obviously, majority of those are in Baldwin, which is a city now.
So that's 2024 before they became a city?
Yep.
Okay.
So this is where the bulk of it was happening even before they left. A lot of it was happening in Baldwin. Big Lake's obviously up there with lots. We had a couple of standard plats in there. Livonia. Nothing in Orac. We had a plat in 2023 or 2022 for Orac, which is a good sized one. Subdivisions, there's 5 subdivisions, which equaled 22 lots. So obviously you can see the inventory's down significantly from 2021. But again, 20 and 21 was Baldwin. Doesn't help the townships, but obviously it helps the overall county. Subdivisions, so Big Lake had 3 with 17 new lots. Livonia had 2 with 5 new lots, so that's where our 5 subdivisions with the 22 lots comes into play. New home construction, 68. Orac is the bulk of that. Again, with the new plat that came in standard, but also the Shores of Eagle is filling up quite a bit. I don't think we have too many lots left in that subdivision. Big Lake.
Do you wanna explain Baldwin? I'm not sure everybody knows about that.
So Baldwin split off to be their, to do their own zoning in 23, was it June of 23?
22 wasn't it?
And ultimately, they are incorporated into a city now, so it's the city of Baldwin. And did they do that the first of the year?
Yeah, that's why you're seeing the big dip here.
Yeah.
Part of it is Baldwin is no longer under county zoning.
Yep. Yeah, so, yeah, it's a huge dip from, that's where the bulk of the development was happening, prior to them breaking off. But the new homes, 68 total, 15 in Big Lake, 5 Blue Hill, 4 Clear Lake, 2 in Haven, 6 in Livonia, 25 in Little Rock, like I said, that's, the bulk of it. Palmer, 6, and San Diego, 5. Other building permits, which are accessory buildings, decks, re-roofing, re-siding, finished basements, additions, in general is 2,914.
Mitch, sorry, of that, what's the highest percentage, would you say, of those different permit types?
I mean, it depends if it's a re-roof, if we have, hail damage, re-siding.
We had a couple storms the last 2 years.
And those are quick, those are easy ones because they're over the counter. They don't require septic permits, so people are, it could be finished basements. Accessory buildings are always kind of a regular thing, so. But probably re-roof, re-side. Commercial building permits, 10. So when we say 10 commercial building permits, it's not like they are actual commercial buildings in commercial zoning districts. It's somebody that does a home business and accessory building, and they have to get like a design professional to go in there, and then it's basically a commercial use. But that even includes like the Ziegler building over in Big Lake Township. They had a huge remodel, so that would be counted as one of the 10, but we probably have 1 or 2 that are actual commercial businesses in commercial districts. Like that in Zimmerman would have been an example of one, but that was an addition. Septics, we have 68 new septics and 145 upgraded. When we say upgraded, it doesn't mean maybe the whole system's upgraded. It might just mean the tank might be upgraded if it failed, or the drain field. A lot of these upgraded ones come from either building permits that require it or sale of the property. When we get a report, and if it's failing, they'd have to update it. A lot of times we don't catch it before the sale, but we'll get it after the sale.
And Mitch, how many community septic systems do we have out there in the county? 3?
We have more than that. I don't know exactly how many, because Baldwin had some and so Jerome in our office does a reporting on them.
Okay.
Biggest one right now is the Shores of Eagle Lake. That's a community septic. I mean, we haven't permitted one probably since mid-2000s.
Okay. Do we touch base with that at any point, being as it's a community
So
septic and it serves so many
the
houses
state,
out there?
yeah, so the state does the reporting
Okay.
on them because it's over 10,000 gallons. So that is through the state. We do have smaller ones that we do the monitoring on, and Jerome works with them.
Okay, so there is a touch base.
Yeah. We know a lot of them are failing. And they're not cheap. We do have the 2 programs that just got the report from Jillian. She works on these in our office, but demand is still high for the loans. And 42,000 approved for 2024. Amount of 674,438 approximately. Continues to increase. We also got a grant, so 37 approved applicants for 2024. Grants total 175,797. This is a great program for the residents because these are so expensive. Again, if somebody comes in, they want an accessory building, well, they only budgeted 20-some grand for accessory building, but then it's on, oh, by the way, you gotta upgrade your septic system, which is 15 to 20 grand. So, I mean, we feel horrible when it happens, but.
On average, what is the average age of these septics that are requiring those upgrades?
I mean, they're supposed to last 30 years, but it just depends on how people take care of them. And unfortunately, a lot of people that move from the cities aren't familiar with septics, and they'll just flush everything in order to get septic served. But
The grant money, where's that grant fund coming from?
I believe the state, but I'm not for sure on that one. But yeah, Jillian in our office would have more details on that. But in order to get septic certified, we had to ride along with a maintainer, and he's like, you can tell the people. I mean, the stuff you see in the tank, and he'll even ask him, moved from the city? He's like, yep. You know anything about septic? She's like, didn't even know I was on one. So that's where a lot of the issues come from. CUP and IUP, conditional use and interim use applications. We had 22 for the townships, 11 of each. I looked at majority of the 11 conditional use. We have a variety from personal storage structures, meaning a garage on a lot without a house. We have a couple of communication towers. Some are single-family housing in districts that require it. Interim use permits, a lot of them we have are home business and accessory buildings. Those are kind of irregular ones. We get a lot of weird inquiries for people that want to do home business and accessory building. I had one recently, somebody wanted to do a coffee shop up front with an auto repair in the back. I'm just like,
Oh, you see that every day.
yeah, every day.
Common.
Yeah, might as well throw a barber in there and.
No.
As long as they got their permits, right? But yes, so we get, I mean, regular, they're, auto repair, just some small businesses somebody wants to operate out of their house, and not egregious, we'll work with them to get them under permit, so.
And I understand that that's something, we're trying to develop these, so maybe they'll move up into an area. I just always have concern because they are going up against businesses that are where they belong,
Yep.
paying the price to be where they belong, and then they're gonna compete against them and be able to do it cheaper.
Yeah.
It's always been an issue where it's not fair to those permitted places that are where they belong.
Yeah.
The proper zoning.
Yeah, I was just thinking if I saw what specific some of these were, but one was a pet grooming business recently that we had, and one was that barber and
Just playing devil's advocate, Ray, and they also get started there and then move to the bigger
I-
place, so that there's a balance there for sure.
I prefaced my comment with saying that I understand that we're looking at these as incubators to move into, but a lot of times that doesn't happen. But I did preface that,
But a lot of times it does.
yes.
just to break down, Big Lake had one IUP, 4 CUPs, Blue Hill had one IUP, 1 CUP, Clear Lake had 1 IUP, 3 CUPs, Livonia had 4 IUP, Palmer 1 IUP, 3 CUPs, and San Diego 1 CUP, 2 IUPs. So that's a breakdown of where the townships were for them. Solar farm permits, we had 4 of them. These are either new ones or ones that needed to reapply if they expired after a year. We get that sometimes if they want to amend it for an example, if they have trees going all around, but then before they're done finishing, say Excel comes in with a new solar farm next to them, well, they're like, well, we don't want trees here, so then they'll amend their IUP so that they can remove trees if it's not necessary. And so here we are now with the updated zoning ordinances of 2024, the adoption of the 2040 comprehensive plan. We updated the state mandatory ordinances of shoreland, floodplain, septic, and cannabis, which was interesting because it was quite a process, collaborated with a lot of departments. And we didn't know what we were doing because the state didn't even have a ordinance in place, so we were just going with what we based off their draft ordinance, some information that they had provided. We feel like we have a good ordinance because we had to get one done by January 1st. They're still not issuing licenses, so I think they're gonna start that in June. We did get our first for the township in for somebody that wants to do a micro business without the on sale, so manufacturing and cultivating. And so we just got that in. I think they're gonna educate us more than we can them, the applicants, because they've been working with the state enough to tell us what we need. So this,
That one in Zimmerman?
yeah.
Okay.
You might have a gap in shoreline ordinances, and it might be a statewide gap. I was talking to Dan at the Soil and Water District Tuesday, and it came up because of this potential gravel pit. But I think one thing we need to look into and figure out whether it's a gap or not is when a gravel pit goes in, when they end it, it can become a lake. Apparently, the shoreline along that doesn't fall under any particular shoreline ordinance, like a natural lake would. And so there might be a gap there that we need to look into, not just us, but it would be statewide, on whether or not there's because DNR apparently doesn't have any authority over it, but it's still a lake, it's still shoreline, it still can affect the watersheds, et cetera. So it might be something in our spare time that we want to look into.
That's a good point, because they are legit lakes. I mean, they're not ever gonna get developed again. They're deep. They can hold
I think there's
fish.
one in Elk River, matter of
they'll-
fact.
Yeah, the east side, Misty Meadows area,
Yeah.
excuse my voice.
Yeah.
I know which one you're talking about, and that is a legit.
Yep.
That we used to fish it and swim it and all that, so. Also, no, but that's a good point, because it is. I mean, DNR has the wetlands, they have the water bodies. This is basically creating a water body that's always gonna be a lake. 2024, we also did a amendment to the yard waste ordinance that had limitations on cubic yards that could go there, but we removed the amount of cubic yards in the zoning ordinance and let the solid waste ordinance determine how much was allowed per the property. We also did a solar farm related business. In connection with all the Excel, there was a property that they purchased that had accessory buildings that they needed for solar panels, storage, vehicles, parking, and so that will, Excel will utilize that new ordinance in interim use permit. So 2025, it's early, but right now our main focus is on the accessory dwelling units. That is a high priority. That was coming out of the comp plan. That is also in relation to the housing study that was done. We'd like to get, I mean, we get inquiries all the time on accessory dwelling units. I mean, the fact that it's even getting out there and townships are talking about it, I'm getting so many calls from residents that want to do it. And again, a lot of these residents are not in platted lots. They're on large acreage, and so, and they're happy, they're excited, they want to stay at their property, they want their kids to come live with them. I mean, these are.
So what's the timeline on that, Mark?
So I'll go to that, next I'll get to that, the timeline of the ADUs. We've got a breakdown of it. But streamlined standard subdivision planning process, that is something that came from the EDA meeting on how we can work with developers on standard plats, streamlining it. Short-term rental ordinance, that is still one that we are looking into. Hamlets, that is one that we would like to get a zoning district to get a little more creative flexibility in that area. Again, these are communities that we'd like to keep the residents there. Not so much bring new people in, but the people that are aging in those townships, we'd like them to be able to stay there. Life cycle housing, we like a broader range of housing types. Right now in the county, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. This is 2.5 acres, this is 5 acres, it's one lot, or one house, one dwelling, so we'd like to get a little more flexibility for the residents. Create a shoreline residential zoning district. An example of this is these older lots around the lakes. They are still subject to the same setbacks as these larger setbacks for these larger lots. So you have a 0.5 acre lot on Briggs. Well, they're getting the same setback from a 2.5 acre lot, 67 feet to the right of way. Well, they also have a 100-foot setback from the lake. So we're trying to get a little more flexibility, maybe loosen up the setbacks to the road would be, so maybe 30 feet to the road right away as opposed to 67 feet. So enough to get a car out of the right of way for a pickup truck. Residential lot sizes in general, we'd like to look into reducing those lot sizes where they would be consistent. A prime example is just right here. When we get into Big Lake Township, there's 1 acre lots. Well, that field, why couldn't they stay consistent? If it's consistent with adjacent development, because then, it's been proven that 1 acre lots can accommodate a house, septic system, well, accessory buildings, so.
That one would be a good study to figure out when the septic has had an issue, what have they been able to do to accommodate and upgrade within that 1 acre lot. So that'd be a good study to figure out.
We did do a 1 acre development up on, by the Briggs chain, and it was shown that can accommodate a house, a primary, a secondary septic, an accessory building. Because we talked about when you do a 2.5 acre lot, you only need 40,000 square feet of, 3 feet of separation. Well, it's less than an acre.
Another thing that I understand that the Public Works has where you cannot put a driveway on a county road. They gotta be, I think, 240 or 50 feet apart before you can put another driveway on. Well, there's some areas that the county road is in a township that is more urban in style, like right off the County Road 43. Where the traffic is only going 30, 35 miles an hour. It's not like most county roads where they're out there going 50 to 55. So maybe that's something that can be looked at too, to open up that thought where you can accommodate some more driveways. Because there already are on County Road 43 before the bridge. You've got driveways like right on top of each other.
No, it's,
But you don't have jurisdiction on that, do you, Mitch?
we don't, but if we could work with Public Works on smaller
Yeah, I'm
lot
just saying
sizes, then
that-
they could.
Public Works does, but
Well, but they don't set the speed limits though, right?
I'm not talking even speed limits, so I'm just plain talking about where the driveway can go onto a county road and how far apart. And my reference to the speed limit was because in the more urbanized, the county road speed is lower.
I guess my question though is there's a little chicken and egg there, because if we want to do smaller lot sizes, by definition, you're gonna have more driveways closer together, then that runs into a conflict with,
Public Works.
with Public Works. They don't set the speed limit, the state does.
No, but they set the
but-
distance.
Yeah, but I mean, so my question is then, does the state take into account how many driveways, what the spacing is on driveways, and set a lower speed limit? Because the issue is you don't want to have driveways on top of each other if you got a 50 mile an hour road.
And I'd have to look into see what the city lot size on 43, because those are a lot smaller than township lot sizes,
Right.
how the county, or the Public Works accommodates them.
We've been able to do some shared driveways too on the lot lines.
Yep.
Loosen up that a little bit. County's been good with that, Public Works.
Oh yeah, when we do a plat, it's all up to the road authority and how they want access. We're out of it, and whatever they want, we just put it as a condition.
How does that work out with shared driveways? I've always thought that would lead to conflict.
Yeah, I mean, I would think it would, but I don't know, it hasn't, it doesn't seem like it has so far.
I think it just comes down to maintenance. So.
Right,
Yeah.
it's just that little
Yeah.
spot right at the
Once you get
beginning.
onto that, because they're on the road right away, bulk of the shared, and then once they get to the property lines, then
Splits
they
right
split
away.
off.
I can add to that, from financing perspective, if someone is buying a home with a shared driveway, we have to have a recorded shared driveway agreement, so they have to engage the other landowner. And, usually they're hiring an attorney or the title company to draft this agreement, both have to agree on maintenance, who's gonna do it. Well, in some cases, we've seen that there's just like personal disputes or frustration or whatever, and then it becomes a difficult thing. Closing could be delayed if they're taking financing.
Sure.
So many other
I know.
factors.
Yeah, sorry to get you talked to that.
No, you're fine. I'm up for discussion for anything. Timeline for the ADUs. So we sent the memo out to all the townships January 28th. We submitted or presented the county board for a workshop on February 4th. So that, a couple weeks ago. We'll have discussion with planning commission tonight at our planning commission meeting. From there, we're hoping to get everything and then present it to planning commission once we get all the township comments on March 20th for the public hearing, and then ultimately, hopefully, final action on the April 15th county board meeting. So that's the timeline of it.
I don't remember, is there a size limitation on the ADU?
At the moment is proposed,
What's proposed right now is there's a percentage for platted lots.
Okay.
With not to exceed like 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
So those are the smaller ones. I'm hoping to hear back from like Big Lake and Livonia and Orac, which will have platted lots, so on their thoughts on it. And then for like larger parcels, it just couldn't exceed the main dwelling.
and my
So-
understanding, the way it's written is it has to be 40% of the residential, the main residential dwelling. So
Not yet.
40%, if you have a residential dwelling that is maybe 1,300 square feet, that would put that accessory unit at 400 or so square feet.
I would've done the math easier, 1,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm using one that
Real
I'm
life
looking
experience.
at.
And that's up for,
Right.
for discussion. That was just, another county had that as an example for that.
And my comment on it was, okay, so you're talking no more than a park model, even out at Carefree. Anybody that, and those are usually older people that are out there, they're putting another 400 square feet onto that park model. So you've got anywhere from 800 and 900
And there are,
square feet. So I think it should be no more than 1,000. I don't think that 40%.
and I wanted to get some understanding on financing, so I did reach out to Molly, and there's requirements in order to do it if you want to get financing. Now, some people might just have cash, I don't know if that affects it, but there are requirements for financing, that it can only be a certain size and so on, and we have that documentation on it, but the size is up for discussion.
So is that based on foundation size? Or if you have a two-story, does it count the square footage for both floors?
No foundation.
Foundation size?
I think there ought to be some sort of limitation on the size. I would just like to have the documentation on the reasoning behind it. Because there's always unintended consequences. If we didn't have a limitation on it, you got a house here, and we get something over here and we call it an ADU.
Well, especially in the platted lots, we want to make it look like when someone drives through, okay, that's the main house, and that's an accessory dwelling unit. That's what we want in a platted lot, because.
Yeah, I think we're on the right track.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right number is. I just think we ought to document what the logic
We'll
is
have
behind it.
we'll definitely have a number for platted lots, but 5 acres or less. The larger parcels, I'm fine if the houses are the same size. If you have 20, 30, 40 acres, I'm not concerned about that. But just my background with private development, you just want to make sure that that product you put out is gonna have, maintain that integrity, as opposed to just, shoddy ADUs sitting around.
Yep.
So.
Can I add some color to that, Mitch? I provided Mitch some of the standards, so during the Biden administration, ADUs became a really big thing, and they changed a lot of the lending rules and laws through the agencies, Fannie, Freddie, HUD. And some of that was because, like, post-COVID, or during COVID, when grandmas were not in a nursing home and you couldn't go visit her, it became kind of a new pop culture thing to keep aging parents on site. Average age of first-time home buyer last year was 38, continuing to grow, and so we have multi-generational living, so that ADU would help to accommodate that multi-generational living. But then added to the ADU financing allowances are income-driven properties, so financing FHA, USDA, VA, Fannie, Freddie, and then some Alt-A type finances do allow for rental income to be used to help offset income for that debt-to-income ratio. And so, yeah, having that adjusted. Now, there's some really important things around it. Well, around the financing piece, the ADU just has to be inferior. There wasn't a specific dollar amount for securing financing. So let's say someone is cash buyer and they're building it. Well, considering resale at some point, that someone would take financing on it, either refinance or purchase. But if that main primary residence was a manufactured home, at no point is an ADU eligible for finance. Modular is considered stick-built. Manufactured, has titled, been on it, wheels have been removed, etc., but it would never be allowed for financing at this point.
Other stuff to consider.
Very fine print, very, very, very fine print and asterisk, but obviously if you're doing rules around it, it should cooperate with what's eligible for financing.
And I agree that the ADU should be less square footage than the primary, of course. I just don't think 450 is like.
Because right now, we have a minimum house size in our ordinance of 720 square feet.
Yeah.
That could be, minimum 720, maximum 1,000, for planned lots or whatever.
But I think it's up for debate, though. I don't necessarily see, I kind of like where Mitch is at, on the house just has to be, I think the language could be something around, on the larger acreage, it could be equal to or less than the square footage, but quote-unquote inferior to meet lending requirements.
And I agree with that. I just don't think, that's why I think that 40% has to get removed.
Oh, you're saying it
That
has to
was
be
my
removed?
point,
Oh, I
yes.
see what you're saying, yeah.
Right now, they're saying 40%,
Not to exceed 1,000.
not to exceed 1,000. So the 40% was what I took issue with, because if I'm gonna go into an ADU, 40% of a 1,300 square foot house.
You want to maximize it.
Yeah.
You want it bigger than a doghouse.
I want it bigger than a doghouse.
She shed.
I got it.
All right, we could, and then, and this is just one we're doing for Streamline. This is just an example of what we're presenting. We have to do a lien event on it in April 1st or so. So basically, what we're proposing is just to, on the final plat, considering we don't do any public hearing, we don't publish it, removing planning commission, if nothing had changed from preliminary to final, absolutely nothing has changed. We get all the final comments from everyone needed, we can just bypass the planning commission and go straight to the county board. So that is just what we are proposing. We've had communications, there's some concerns with department on that, so we will have that and we'll see what comes from it. But other than that, any questions? I think we kind of went through them as we went.
All right, any questions for Mitch?
I have a question, this might be more for Rayanne and Andrew. Last year in the planning and zoning budget, we had a $75,000 line item for a consultant to help move some of these along a little quicker. Budgets were a little tight, so we pulled that $75,000 out, and staff was gonna do it incrementally. That has obviously slowed down some of these processes. We did have a large abatement that did not get awarded last year because of performance issues. So we do have enough money from last year that did not get spent out that we can maybe pay $75,000 to get that consultant and get these ordinances moving faster. But maybe that.
Is that something the board would have to vote
The
on?
board would have to approve it because it's over 50,000, but just for discussion, as long as Mitch mentioned, there's several ordinances he'd like to keep moving.
Well, if we've got the money due to the, the abatement, if it's, if it's there to execute on, I don't really have an issue with it, you?
Yeah, no, it isn't like we're trying to find new money.
Yeah.
So I think it's vital. I forget what meeting I was at, and I stopped in and talked with planning and zoning to find out where they were at with this. Now, as an EDA, if you all remember, We, you know, when we kind of revamped EDA here, one of the major things that we pointed out, that planning and zoning probably affects economic development more than any one thing out there. And that's when we reached out to planning and zoning to form a better working relationship, and it's been great. They're all in, and they've been all in, and they've really supported the economic development side of life. The concerning thing that I got from talking to Mark was, because of the funding being pulled, to be used for a consultant to finish this up, he was estimating that this wouldn't be wrapped up till the end of 2026. That's a long time. So, the zoning ordinance, I mean, from an EDA perspective, in my opinion, is, you know, the one thing that can affect all property owners, okay? It's not, you know, when we were talking the housing fund, and we were looking like, well, how do we disperse this? And to tell you the truth, after that meeting, I felt a little bit greasy, because we got this money, we're trying to invent ways. I mean, Andy was the one who brought it up, says these programs are already there, and so now we've got a bunch of tax money that we're just trying to creatively get out. By doing this, it benefits all residents, it benefits all developers, not just the first 3 that come to get the 25. We streamline processes in all areas. It benefits all builders, all developers, housing, commercial, everything that EDA is about, this benefits. So anything that we can do to help get to the finish line a year sooner, I think is very, very important.
Well, I think the other thing we gotta realize is just the realities of what's gonna happen in 2026 too. We better do it now, because tea leaves are, budgets are gonna be very tight starting in 2026. So there may not be the money there in 2026. So if we do it now, we still get done. So, I'm okay with it.
I agree.
All right. No other questions for Mitch? Thank you. Sorry. All right, housing study results.
And we'll keep an eye, we're doing well on time, but we have this study, or the survey results, and then we have our recommendations for what to do with the Housing Trust Fund money as well, so we'll go through. So as with any survey, we're hoping to get lots of people through it. We were able to get a total of 24 participants, not as much as we would like, but as with any survey, it was a lot of going person by person and really holding their hand to the computer to make sure they completed the survey. So we got as much as we could in the time period that we had here. We did break down the surveys into the 3 different categories, so we'll kind of go through some of the results here. The first one was that real estate agents brokers survey. So these were our participants, the companies that they represented. And stop me from going through too fast for anything, but we had 10 individuals respond to the first question, which was ranking the ways that we could try and improve. And again, because it's real estate agents brokers, we got that top one, offering more incentives for buyers, sellers, on the first-time home buyers. The second highest ranked was removing unnecessary redundant requirements. We realized after the survey was out that that was a very broad thing to say, and so we kind of circled back with some of the respondents and asked them, you know, you flagged unnecessary redundant. What did you mean by that? Do you have an example? I'd say that most of the examples we got back were a while ago in the past, like 5 years ago in the past, they tried to do a permit, they tried to do, well, that was more on the building side, but a lot of the examples we got back on this redundant side was processes that have been improved in the last few years, either through the cities or through our own processes. So not so much on our real estate agents, brokers, but when we get to the lenders and we get to the builders, a lot of those processes have been improved, so over the years. So that's at least a positive thing. And then having the ADU zoning codes up there, so that's good that that's flagged as a high priority there too. Then we asked if we were to create low-interest loans, would you be interested in learning more? Obviously, everyone is yes, they're interested in learning more, so kind of an easy question there. But then that breaks us down into the next question of, if we were to do loans, what would you be most interested in? New construction, redevelopment, or rehabilitation? So again, this is our real estate agents brokers. They're most interested in the rehabilitation loan type of loan. And again, this is, at the end, we'll kind of summarize what each of the three groups really highlighted on. But with our real estate agents brokers, that was the rehabilitation loans, was the highest.
Brian, have you talked to any of the cities? Because I know Big Lake had an opportunity to have rehabilitation loan fund, and they struggled to get anybody to utilize it, just because most of your rehabilitation is being done in housing that is more aged, and usually people are not of the economic means to take on another cost. So I'm just curious as to really where that would meet a target market.
Yeah.
Could I answer that?
Sure.
We've spent some time, I helped with the Sherburne County Housing Summit. I really inspired some of these connections, relationships, conversations, but, so my name is Molly Nadeau. I'm a loan officer. I've been lending for 25 years in the area. I'm gonna lay a little foundation to help answer this question. So, it's no secret that new construction cost per square foot is much higher, and existing homes cost per square foot is much lower. So most first-time home buyers, young families, go into an existing home, aging housing stock. The average age of home, I can't remember if it's 38 or 40 years old in Sherburne County, but it's about that nationally as well. And so a variety of issues come from that. Well, a number one issue now that has surfaced is insurance. Insurance has become this crazy, difficult thing. And so when somebody goes to resell their existing home property, we have insurance companies that won't insure the home if the roof is over 8 years old. Roofing, siding issues, they're being so fussy in particular, and the premiums become obnoxious, and it starts to price people out on that resale, sometimes too late after loan approval. The other thing that happens is when someone is able to do an update to their home, then generally they're able to get a higher price for that home. They'll be able to profit more. So from a seller's perspective, there could be more profit in it if they had an easier path to access funds. I don't know why those funds weren't used, if it was a lack of knowledge, information, getting it to the public, availability, what the rules were to access it.
Well, this
But-
was like 10+ years ago, so
But,
we're in a
you know,
different market
partnering
now.
with your public-private friends, specifically lenders, real estate community, and now that we have a platform and a database, we had 100 people in that room last year that are interested in this, that are waiting for follow-up and fruit of our endeavor. So I feel like in Sherburne County, we would have the ability to do something really cool to get that messaging out. But now for the buyer coming into it, they're gonna have a more affordable option for insurance, but in tandem, most people have a cash issue. There's so much down payment assistance available. We have used more than ever from alternative sources, Minnesota Housing being one of them. There's a variety of others. And so we can get people into a home for literally $1,000. The bigger issue is they do not have the funds to do these major updates once they get into that house. So we're helping our aging housing stock keep and maintain value, helping new homeowners going to a home that is more safe and habitable, helping their insurance premiums stay lower, and then maybe not need for insurance in the future as quickly because of the new products. There's just a litany of layers of benefit that could come from it. And the other piece is when you're doing rehab renovation, we're not using nationals. Usually these are local contractors, local taxpayers, they have their kids in the local school district. So the collateral impact from the contributors to earn the bid, do the work, now that money stays into our community as well.
And like I said, this was like 10 years ago. It wasn't the target market of the real estate process. It was more the area of the Big Lake community and available to people to upgrade their home that weren't necessarily selling it. So I hear what you're saying, it sounds like there could be a different time and opportunity to utilize the funds now.
Yeah, well, in with the Housing Trust Fund, with that in mind, having the intention of like having it replenish and earn and grow. So if you're doing it to folks that are intending to move, so you have a shorter timeline, so you can have like balloon payments on that, so it's going back. You probably can have a fee schedule, so you're earning fees, small interest, that money's being replenished and used over and over again. It's having a dramatic real impact with like our local homeowners.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that concerned me about the Housing Trust Fund was making sure that however we use it, it aligns with what we felt like the housing study required. So if there's a way, and one of the areas was workforce housing, right? Which is typically also first-time home buyers, or at least those two align. So if there's a way to align the Housing Trust Fund so that it enables that that demographic, then I think that aligns the goals nicely. So we need to keep going through and see what everybody else said, but I think there's some there on this.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Slide again.
Yeah, it's good previews for what's coming up. The next slide here basically then dives in and says, if we do offer rehabilitation loans, rank them on your preference. And for this group, they ranked seller rehabilitation loans, so exactly what we just mentioned, as being the top, and then over buyer rehabilitation, so after they purchase it as a new buyer, or just general homeowners that get a stay in their house. So just what we talked about, the seller rehabilitation loan, that type was ranked the highest in this group. And then we asked for some open-ended well, this one, we talked about if we did offer a loan, would we want it to be primary or secondary, or like a gap financing? Most came in as the secondary, the gap financing, which is what we're kind of focusing on anyway, so that was good to see. And then we did ask the grant question. So if we did offer any sort of grants through the program, what would they like to see? Because we just wanted to get that feedback too. And for the real estate agents brokers, the highest category was that housing buyer down payment assistance. And then coming in second was the SAC and WAC fees and some of those other free fees. And then to finish out our real estate agent brokers, there's an open-ended question on just getting more feedback on what they think. We did get a very specific kind of write-up about wanting a tiny home community, and then just affordability came up. It's pretty much the only answers we got there. So when we look to summarize for real estate agent brokers, our key takeaways, looking for rehabilitation seller rehabilitation loans first. If we did do any grants, they'd want to prioritize down payment assistance, and then just the word affordability came up a few times with that group. So then we dive into our builders developers. This was honestly the hardest category to get survey respondents. We tried a few different ways and grabbed different groups and really tried to twist arms. So we got 5.
Yeah, that's not me.
Yeah. Yeah. So this one, their priorities were waiving park dedication or covering park dedication fees, rebating permit fees, again, that unnecessary redundant requirements, which we did ask about that. There was a specific example about, again, a few years back, the permitting process for a deck being so convoluted and so expensive that it wasn't worth trying to build that deck onto the house. So again, kind of an example from a few years back. And then again, SAC and WAC, and then the ADUs came up again.
I just want to get clarification on the SAC and WAC. My experience with SAC and WAC is very distorted because it has to do with building spaces that have 12 sinks in the Met Council area. So that's very distorted. So what's the issue up here with Saginaw? Why does that keep coming up?
Well, the second half is the cost of, like, okay, the infrastructure, the sewer and, water treatment plant, the, water treatment plant. The cost to build those things is very large. I mean, the second edition of phase 2 for Big Lake, the price tag is at 50 million right now.
So the Saginaw fees on the individual
Help us.
homeowner are
New
really high at
construction-
this
new
point.
construction.
Okay.
They've been high for many years.
So when you're doing a building, you're, actually the building official prescribes how many units of sack and whack you're gonna use.
Based off of the Met Council.
And that, then, based on how many units you need is what it goes up to. So I don't know exactly where it's at in Big Lake now, 8,000 per unit, you know, so if you're doing a commercial building, it can get quite expensive. I don't know why that was a concern on the realtors survey, as if you're, you know, reselling or, you know, the sack and whack
You don't pay
fees.
it again.
Sack and whack fees are paid with permitting.
Yeah.
And development, so.
Those fees are bundled in the retail price of the home. And so real estate agents understand, especially if they represent, you know, the builder or development, that comes into that end price that they have to deliver to the homeowner. I don't know if you were at the Sherburne County Housing Summit, but there was a section where we had some panelists at the end, a really good listen. And one that I recall, Denny Nelson, Progressive Homes. This is a home builder they're in Big Lake. They build 120 homes a year, 80 on the low side, and he's doing the majority of his building outside of Sherburne County because the cost to develop his lots are so expensive. He's been sitting on lots for years and years. He gave a variety of examples. And so he's been going outside, north of the county, Isanti County, etc. Chad Christian gave a variety of other things. Chad Christian, a local builder, they're out of Rogers, but they've built in Elk River for a number of years, but purposefully and intentionally try to do more business outside of the county. So you're losing in competition because those other county fees for sack and whack and permitting trend a little bit lower, and that shows up in that end price of the homeowner. So
So
real estate agents have a keen eye on it.
Unfortunately, the challenge we have as a county board here, or in the county, we don't deal with sack and whack, that's a city.
I was just curious.
That's a
Yeah.
city issue, so.
Okay, makes sense.
How deep can we get into the city's business as far as what they charge is, open for debate.
And the city charges based off of what the cost is, number one, to build that infrastructure, which has a lot of constraints on them because of what the pollution control agency puts on them. They have to meet requirements on. Nobody wants to go out and build a $50 million phase 2 addition to any wastewater plant, but you have to, otherwise you cannot build because the state will shut you down. So there's a lot of things in it. It isn't that the city's making money off of this. They're just trying to cover the cost of the debt. And,
But from a priority standpoint for the county, to your point, it's not something we can affect. So it's a priority, but it's not something that's gonna
I'd love
really
to see
affect
them
us.
lower.
Was there any, I know in a previous, I think our last meeting, when we were going over the surveys, we kind of talked about keeping that because we were talking about whether there's any way for this board to cover some of those. So the city still gets paid, but our board comes in some way to help cover that or offset it. I think
And that
that's,
could be an answer
that was
to-
the only reason why we kept it in the,
Right.
in the surveys.
Right, and that could make us, to Molly's point, more competitive to the the areas around us.
How do you manage the end product to the buyer? Like, if you were to go and help Lennar, National Builder, do all these things, and let's say that saves them $2,000 per lot, example, they're beholden to their shareholders. How are you gonna manage that end price? Are they just gonna tell you, here's our price, but we're gonna give a 2,000 credit, but they can really build that in. And so it would be very difficult to manage profit margin.
Yeah, it's just gonna go to their bottom line.
Can I say something? Is it okay?
Absolutely.
As a city,
As a cities, please say.
I mean, this is important for us to hear. We hear this often. We've done a lot of comparisons in Becker on our sack and whack compared to others in the county, and we're fairly low compared to the other ones. And we've had builders that have been mentioned that still haven't built, even though we're low, because the profit margins that they're working on are razor thin. So even with reduction in some of these fees, we're still not seeing a drastic increase in city building permits. And so we're exploring other ways that we can do that internally. I think we've talked about that, Andy. You know, how can we, is it fee reductions? Can you build a package that reduces that enough to make the incentive better? And so I think this is important for us to hear. The sack and whack, I mean, Becker is one in particular that we've discounted our sack and whack for the last few years. It'll go through the end of 25. We'll explore if that gets extended. It has helped some single-family homeowners, multifamily, reduction in the sack and whack price. Like we have our multifamily units that has affected their bottom line a little bit. And so I think the other thing with cities is obviously you're a lot denser lots. You're trying, the tax base is a little bit higher when you're doing those denser lots. It just comes with the treatment. You don't have a septic, so the treatment facility is the city, which do require some cost to be maintained to maintain that system. So the sack and whack really is there for the use that you're putting on the system over time. Rather than having to replace a septic system, you know, as a private owner, 25 grand, this goes towards the cost of that system over the long haul, and you're not getting hit again and again. It's a one-time fee on the front end. We've actually, and this is just a city end, we've changed our sack and whack calculations. We no longer use a fixture unit or anything in the city. We use a straight pipe sizing fee. So you have, if you're a single family home and you tap in, this is your flat fee. If it's commercial, pipe sizing is this. If you bump your commercial up, it doesn't matter as long as the pipe size stays exactly the same, similar to what St. Cloud does on theirs as well. So that makes it much more easy to calculate. And it's, for staff, it's no longer having to go through a big rigmarole of how many fixture units is this and square footage here. That's also helped some of the process, I think, a little bit too. So just a few things for you to be aware of, that this is definitely not lost on at least us in Becker. We have conversations, I think, about this quite a bit. And it's a conversation we're having right now. We have a group just in our own city talking about infrastructure and development costs. And how do we do some of this stuff to bolster our own building in our city? So, and I'm sure other cities are doing the same thing.
And some of it too is also the cost of land in Sherburne County. Is, you know, when you have, like, we've got quite a few large parcels in Big Lake, for example. The owner of the land wants $2 million something for it. And then now you've got to have a developer come in and try to pencil that with the other costs that go along with it. I want to say maybe about, when the housing market tanked, the city of Big Lake, there was a few developers that had lots left to develop. So the city thought, okay, let's cut everything in half, and we're gonna have lots of people coming in and building. The only person that finished out his lots was the person that had 24 remaining lots in his development, and nobody else came and knocked on the door. So you try everything you can, and hopefully something sticks at some point, but it's just plain, a lot of it, you can't have a landowner sell his land for less than what he wants to sell it for. And there's costs that go along with the infrastructure that goes with it. So I think there's lots of good opportunities. You gotta figure out which one's gonna make it work.
I think the other thing too is, and this isn't showing up here because I noticed it was asked about TIF and abatement, which isn't mentioned a lot. However, a lot of the builders that we get questions from, that is like #1 thing on their list, especially if they're a bigger developer. Well, are you gonna do TIF? Are you gonna do TIF? Because it's often something that's given by most communities across the board when they do a development project. And so that's another thing too, you know, depending on the city or where you're at, like in Becker with the tax transition, that's always a thing we have to look at. Is there a different way that can make the same amount of impact with the developer but using a different formula? And so that's something too on this list that maybe isn't shown by who responded, but it is something that we're hearing a lot.
And I apologize, I have to get to a meeting in Becker, but
Thanks, Sam.
Yep.
All right.
All right, so moving forward here, with this group, all wanted new construction loans, the different types of loans offered, so they really focused on new construction. And then we did ask, if we did offer loans, would you see it as primary or secondary financing? Kind of split here. Got some saying yes primaries, yes secondary, so not too much information there. But this next slide, again, goes into that. If we did offer any sort of grants, what would you want to see? And coming up with covering or waiving or figuring out some sort of creative financing for Sac and Whack, park dedication, permitting. So again, kind of information that echoes what we've seen here.
It pretty much covers development costs, doesn't it?
That's exactly right. And then we did ask that open-ended question, what other things would you like to see? We did get a response about density and then redevelopment near central business districts. So our final group, the key takeaways. Again, just because we got such a limited surveyed participation, we'd have to caveat, we'd want to keep having these conversations with builders and developers, which is something in my role I'm trying to do more of. I am involved with, so Centricare has a larger region housing group that Kathy Parsons is running, and I'm involved, there's 5 different cohorts. I'm involved with 2 of them, but the way that Centricare is looking at it is they want to get involved with housing because it affects the greater public health. And they look at it at the greater St. Cloud region. So the way Kathy Parsons describes it is drawing that 100-mile radius around St. Cloud, which is most, we've got Sherburne County in there. So they are looking at a lot of what Jacob had mentioned. That group is looking at standardization amongst the cities and comparing what different cities' processes are with permits and with fees. And so I say that to say, that group's going to be a good group for me to keep getting connected with on the builders, developers side, to just keep getting to know our builders and developers in the area. So hopefully we get more participation as time goes on. And our last group is our lenders and financial institutions. So we got 8 participants there, a bit higher. And their priorities, incentives for first-time homebuyers, secondary loan offerings. They didn't mention community and small business attraction. And then WAC comes up again and incentivize builders and small businesses to invest in real estate. So a bit of a different response there. And then we asked the same question of if we did offer loans in new construction, redevelopment, or rehabilitation, everyone that answered that question said yes to new construction, and then they're kind of interested in all the different loan types is what we get out of that question. When asking them what type, whether primary or secondary, come up with gap financing, secondary, flexibility in loan terms and conditions. Came up here too.
I mean, just pay it when you want to.
Yeah.
Is that an option?
Yeah.
So flexible.
So,
I mean, you technically could pay when you want to. Just, and then if it was used for grants, they really focus on the permitting fees to either waive or offset those. We did have one other come up, and it just was a no option, so just threw that in there. And then the one slide here that was interesting is just asking that open-ended question, and we did have 2 responses there, both focused on seniors. So one was just affordability and senior-friendly features, so prioritizing those, and maybe something like a senior center, which is a bit outside the scope here. So that takes us, again, kind of overall, what we just talked about with this group. That takes us to our 2 recommendations that Dan and I would recommend as far as looking at this. So this slide is really credit to Andy as far as if we were looking on the development side, this would be a gap financing for land development loans. So again, working with the developers to come in as gap financing to offset some of that cash contribution that the developer would need to bring. It would be a low-interest loan, which would make it attractive, and you know, we can have some flexibility with maybe having them just do interest-only payments first, which would kind of ease the burden in the beginning there, and then really aligning that with our housing goals, maybe prioritizing workforce housing projects. And I don't know if, Andy, you wanted to say anything else on that one, but.
I think a lot of the developers, so interagency guidelines for all banks. If you buy land to hold and not immediately develop, you're stuck at 65% loan to value. When you're developing, once you get them to a finished lot status, you can go up to 75%. A lot of the developments that we finance, you know, it's a great big, you know, two issues that they're having is number one, the time. They're gonna have to buy this land, go through the process like we were talking about earlier. And that's a lot of capital to tie up in a project to get those developments. So one thought was provide some gap financing in there, so if they can only go to 75%, this could be used in a way that they would be able to use less cash down, especially for that holding period of time.
Would banks allow the combined loan to value at a higher amount to fund that first mortgage?
Yep. I'm in first, I don't care what they have for seconds. To be honest.
That's in all the seconds.
What order of magnitude, what would the size of these gap financing loans be?
We just did 10 parcels in Sauk Rapids. And I think the total overall cost was about 800,000. Oh, that'd be more, our loan was 600. In a situation like this, you'd be looking at maybe 30 to 60,000. It'd be more for this wouldn't fit the nationals. This would be your small. I mean, you'd probably find something like this useful.
I don't know that we would.
With smaller developers.
Yeah, maybe some would, but I don't think that we would. I don't. It also kind of worries me too that if the developer that's going into this process, if they don't have enough money they need that extra whatever 30 or 50,000, they shouldn't be in that game to start with.
You talking about the carrying cost?
Yeah, I mean, if they don't have that kind of money too, I mean, it's you've seen a lot of times, I mean, history with the last downturn. I mean, a lot of those guys went under because they were just carrying too much interest. It'll kill you. So if you can't turn your lots really fast and you're financing, you're screwed.
It's gotta be a good project.
Okay. Well, good, well,
Sorry, yeah, we got one more, this came in last minute as of yesterday, so looking at, as far as another option goes, the homeowner rehab, so kind of all the focus of, a lot of the surveys were that seller rehabilitation, so this loan looks like if someone is putting their house up for sale or is going to within the next 3 to 6 months, but has a significant improvement on their house that would significantly affect how they could sell that house, they would take a loan through us, make that renovation, and then when they sell their house, they pay back entirely on the loan. The reason why we would suggest this is that St. Paul has a similar program. We're trying to get more information as to who they actually run it through as far as the financial institution. But St. Paul runs it as a zero interest loan. We'd recommend a low interest loan. But that way, those that want to sell their houses can actually do that and have a wider range of buyers because, to our Molly's point, we can have buyers that are first-time home buyers, VA home buyers, and I can actually increase that. A lot of what you were saying earlier.
So a common issue when home buyers are coming in, if they're using VA, USDA, which, once you get outside of Elk River is gonna be a really popular one product, and FHA, any of these HUD products, the home has to have certain particular standards for resale, and one of the things is peeling paint. Well, every home in Minnesota's got peeling paint around different windows, thresholds, whatever. Current sellers, a lot of times don't want to deal with it. So just for some perspective, 2019, 2021 into 2022, the market was moving so fast that many sellers said, no government financing. We only want conventional financing, and that held true because we had about 91% conventional financing for properties during that time. So it shut out all of our veterans, USDA and FHA home buyers. They had to sit on the sidelines and wait. That's starting to increase now, but so many of these properties, we have to deal with some of these issues to make it safe and habitable for these buyers. So when this is done this way, well, two things. A homeowner generally has a higher equity position. And so you probably have the, capacity and availability for a lower risk where you can put in that loan with that home seller and still, maybe you would cap it at like 85 LTV or combined LTV or 90 combined LTV. You have to leave room for real estate commissions, negotiations, cost to sell. A home buyer generally comes in with, not much left over, and so again, they wouldn't have the capacity to either deal with that through the form of an escrow or rehab or cash pay, whatever. So the point, when we started this process, Jessica and I were the former EDA, we started preparing for that housing summit. We did tons of research on housing trusts, and what we learned was most of housing trust funds were in Hennepin County, Ramsey County, some in Anoka, surrounding, but none in Sherburne, like ever, never. So this is really kind of groundbreaking for our county to get this housing trust fund. And a lot of the ones like St. Paul that we were looking at, or even down payment assistance programs like Minnesota Housing, most have switched to, instead of grants, they are paid back interest fees so that they can keep it going and reoccurring and growing over time. And again, with a home seller, you're gonna have a shorter window for that money to be out.
And the way St. Paul does it too is there's a balloon payment. So if that seller decides they do their project and they're like, great, we're gonna stay in our house, they still need to pay back that loan, and that balloon payment kind of is an assurance for us that hopefully they do move forward with selling the home. So the whole point is really to move that sale forward with this type of program.
I really like this second. Well, I think it does a couple of things. One is it aligns with what we found in the housing study, right? We need workforce housing. Workforce housing is analogous to first-time homebuyers. Right?
Can I?
Right.
Somebody give me a definitive description of what qualifies as workforce housing.
For the housing trust fund, it has to be anything under the 115% of our area AMI. So looking, I think that's anything under.
That's income based, and so a two-person household, 11 County Metro, is income of $130,000. So that the income is used to qualify for the purchase. Generally, someone can buy 4 times their income. So I don't know what Sherburne County average household income is.
It's about 105.
105. Okay, so then really you'd be under $400,000 for like list price, appraised value.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. And I'm not necessarily advocating that it could only be, that could only be qualified for it, but I do like the idea of putting the qualifying around first-time home buyers. And then having these loans, the specific things that these loans go for, address the specific issues that you're talking about that inhibit the sale of the house, whether it's, the insurance requirements or whether it's the FHA, VHA, those requirements. Because I feel like that stretches how much impact whatever dollars we have.
So what you're suggesting, and I would agree with if this is true, is that the loan specifications would have to be written to, the home has to be brought up to VA standards or FHA standards. You can't go halfway with this, or you're not gonna get, so if it's like, well, we're gonna get 10 grand to paint the windows, but that still doesn't qualify you for the different loan programs that
Something
we
you
haven't
could do
done.
to ensure that, there are HUD, what's the word, we use them for like 2 or 3K loans, so like, okay, the word has left my brain. Plus 40. So, there are HUD, we'll call it like, it's not an appraiser, but they're like, an inspected type person, and then they tell you how to make that home HUD compliant, the minimum requirements to do that. And then you may have additional things, but there's gonna be a minimum standard. And I wanna add from new construction, if you can get existing housing stock to turn over, those are generally the move-up buyers that fulfill that new construction, that higher price per square foot. So I feel like the collateral impact can be so much greater that moves people into that higher price point.
Yeah, it's like
I
what
think we're on
Molly-
the same page though.
Yeah. What Molly says about, with the HUD requirements, because our first house we sold to a buyer that was using HUD, we had to actually put in a different window because one of the windows in the house did not comply with the standards.
So, Andy, where we got derailed a few months ago was with the information that, okay, great, we're throwing out all this stuff, but it's already provided at the state level. Is this a program that is not provided at the
This
state
is
level?
provided.
It's provided.
Yeah.
So we're just doubling up on what they can go to the state and get anyway.
My question would be is if this is something we wanted to do, to find out how this program is going to be different from the Minnesota Fix-Up Fund. The Minnesota Fix-Up Fund has different programs. They have stuff exactly for this. If it is something that a seller would do prior, my questions would be is if we're doing this loan, is it gonna be secured or unsecured? Because if it's gonna be secured, you're gonna have to check the title to verify that you do have the equity in there. There's no judgments, there's no other liens that you're not aware of. If it's secured, you're gonna need the evaluation on the house. Now, I know with Minnesota Housing, you can just get away with the broker's price opinion, you don't need a full appraisal. So they do streamline it in that aspect. That's what I would like to know from the aspect of the seller getting it to bring it up to the standards to sell. Now, from the buyer's aspect, if they do buy these homes and it's a VA home, FHA home, they don't have equity in there anyway. Minnesota Housing does offer an unsecured option for this.
So in order to make this even worth discussing, we'd have to find a way that this money would be getting to people that would not otherwise qualify through there.
Right.
Otherwise, we're just coming up.
We're just doubling up on what is already there and proven to
I
work.
am adamantly against.
Well, I think what we do is, let's take a look at that existing program. Figure out, what the, how it works and where the shortfalls are. And see if there's a way that we could make this program more accessible.
If we can reach a group that
That
is not
can't be
being
reached by
served.
that. I mean, two things. One, there's already a model out there, so we're not reinventing the wheel. But I'm sure that it's not a perfect wheel either. So there may be some
Yeah, it's a government program.
Yeah, well, yeah, so is this.
He's being facetious.
No, I know. But I, I still like, I still think there's some there. There may be there is an existing program, but let's look at the specifics of that program. What maybe some of the downfalls are of that program, or some of the restrictions that keep it from being able to, be more widespread. And if we can find a competitive advantage, for lack of a better term, against that program, then I think there might be some there.
I can definitely come back to the board with that.
Yeah.
Next month.
And I'm okay with the first making the first recommendation, as another optional, use of the funds. Doesn't mean we have to give it to every, potential project, right?
I think there's some discussion there, and I mean, it's great information and hard work, but, for me, I need to go process this, make some calls, dig a little deeper, so we'll put this back on the agenda after we've all had time to, really.
Well, I would like them, like you said, come back with some very specific recommendations. This is what we found, the current program does. this is why we think we can make this one different, and come out with some recommendations on that, and then same thing on the other. I like that too.
Can I add one thing, slightly unrelated? Probably speaking to you, Mitch. The 2 to 4 unit housing stock is like extra aged and difficult, and so difficult, like we don't have any new construction that I'm aware of that's 2 to 4 unit. However, something that is also kind of pop culture, real estate, is many times buyers want to buy something that allows for an affordable living path. And so when you have multi-unit housing, 2 to 4 units that falls under residential, someone can owner occupy one, rent the others, start to offset, and it becomes a path to wealth building. Over time, they'll likely replace themselves with a renter. I mean, any young person that's on any type of social media, TikTok, Reels, YouTube, this is a common thing that we actually teach in our industry. And I want to leave you with this. This is just a bigger issue overall. When the average age of first-time home buyers is 38 years old, and net worth study shows that renters have diminishing wealth from 2022, 23 to 24, that net worth study that the Federal Reserve Board conducted shows that net worth has been decreasing. Average net worth for renters is now $10,000. Home ownership households' average net worth in this country has exceeded $400,000, so that disparity continues to grow. Some of it is an affordability issue, and that could help with that. A lot of it is a lack of understanding issue, but I see just a massive amount of rental units going up everywhere, and so we're perpetuating this like live in poverty lifestyle for so long. We compare that to baby boomers, that category of people, the average age of first-time homebuyer was 24. Baby boomers are said to transfer the largest amount of wealth of any generation in American history, and 80% of that wealth holdings is through real estate. So there is something to real estate. So bigger picture, if we want our citizens to be able to thrive, have pathways to grow wealth, real estate is a key factor in that. It grows at such a faster rate than any 401k could ever. It's proven a zillion ways. So I don't know if there's any language around 2 to 4 units, but financing is for sure something that is focused on and opened up. And we are not competing as a county for that property type. I have to go. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Mike. Have a good day.
All right, Brian, you get to take us home.
Yeah. And really, I'd say there's only two areas I'd really want to focus on briefly. First one in that business retention expansion. So we have been, even before my time and Jessica's time, working with the city of Becker with the ILT Academy, so through the Just Transition Fund grant. And that grant is coming to its conclusion at this point. It's coming up here soon. So we have current ILT. So the ILT Academy is an entrepreneurship program where participants throughout Sherburne County can go for 10 weeks every Thursday night, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., and learn how to get their business ideas to a kind of a working model by the end of it. And they are having, a big event coming up in March is the ILT Academy is basically moving this online program to an in-person session. It's going to be 3 Saturdays in March, and they just told us their location, which will be the Big Lake High School. So they're working out of that space, and it'll be 3 Saturdays in March, first, second, and fourth Saturday. And they already have 12 teams that are signed up for that. It's been interesting to see that get pulled together, but the ILT crew is really happy with that. And so just wanted to say that because that is an in-person event. That's why I sent out that email, I think it was yesterday. They are looking for community members and business leaders to come on that very last day, which is that March 29th, from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., just to be there to hear the pitches. So at the very end, it is a pitch event for those participants, and they'll actually have some cash prizes for some of those. I think it's up to $1,500, I think, for the top person or top team. So that's very exciting. But like I said, at this point, that runway is coming to an end. I think we have one more cohort coming up in spring.
Yeah,
that's funded through that.
We're extended through Q2 of this year, so
Q2.
June 30th.
Okay. So that's coming to an end here. And then last thing on the housing side. So for Minnesota Housing, they have just put out their matching funds program for the Housing Trust Fund. So we did submit our intent to apply within the time frame. So now we are allowed to move forward to submit our request for proposal, our proposals for the matching funds for our housing trust fund. And this is money that's only matching income that we put into the housing trust fund, so that's the $150,000 that we're asking to match. So they'd be matching that 150. That whole proposal is due by March 19th, so it's right before our next EDA board meeting. So we are going to put together our proposal with where the housing trust fund stands now. So obviously, we didn't reach any conclusions today, and that's fine. So what we'll do in our proposal is say, we do have the ordinance established, and we have the general direction of what we're gonna be using that with, and really kind of paint that picture, and that's what we'll be able to submit for that. There is an information session this afternoon, which I'll be attending just to get more information about that program. So we'll be as competitive as we can be at this point for that. It's hard to know how broad they are with the competitiveness, but we'll, like I said, put together as competitive as a package as we can. I think those are the two main things that we can end 3 minutes early.
Any questions for Brian? All right, I'd be looking for that final motion.
One question.
Yeah.
What kind of information would you guys like from the fix-up fund?
For me, I think it says probably all answered in their informational sheet that a homeowner, you know, would
Well,
get.
here's kind of like, I'm on their website right now. Do you guys want to see the product manual, rates,
Well,
I think
qualifications
the
for
more
it?
information, the better.
Okay, I
Yeah.
can send all of this to
That'd be
Brian and
fine. I
Dan, and then he
appreciate
can
that.
send it out.
Yeah.
That way you'll get to see the entire loan package of what
Yes.
qualifies.
Yeah, not just the bullet points, but.
Right, it's not just the bullet points, because like with
But I-
some of the stuff with the plumbing, they have what's qualified, what's not qualified. And I think a big part of this program is there's not very many organizations that offer or that participate in it, because like for a bank, we do this because it's part of our Community Reinvestment Act. Because there's two parts to this too. There's one part that's income, limited by income. Then there's the not limited by income. You know, the secured and the unsecured. And then they also have the Energy Plus, which is up to $30,000. If you're putting energy efficient items in new HVAC, new AC system, you can qualify for $30,000 at 3.5% interest rate. So a lot of this stuff is in here. I just want to know how much you guys want to see.
Well, at the end of the day, here's what I want, right? I want Brian to do a SWOT analysis on that program and how it aligns with making the home HUD qualified. And then based on that SWOT analysis, okay, here's how we could structure a program that capitalizes on the strengths of the program, but also capitalizes on its weaknesses, so that we have something that accomplishes the same thing, but reaches a different demographic.
And just to further throw out what some of the challenges are here, so as Andy says, a lot of banks, lenders won't participate in this. A lot of builders don't either.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I've done HUD VA, we haven't touched them for years. You know, it's too much of a pain in the ass, right down to it. Of course, you know, we're not in that market anyway, but probably, you know, once every 5 years we were asked last year if we'd be willing to do an FHA project. We turned it down, as did the first 15 builders that this person called, so there are some challenges.
Well, and maybe I'm talking about the wrong thing, but I was talking about the rehabilitation ones.
Exactly, but I'm just saying that the loan programs, FHA, VA, they are challenging. So when there is a good market, okay, so when building's good, when remodelers are busy, things like that, they're not gonna participate, or it's tougher to find.
Well, I think it's finding people, so like when Molly was talking about the down payment assistance, that is a very difficult program to get everything lined up. We don't do that with our secondary markets at the bank, but when you have someone like Molly who does just, all they have is secondary market loans. This would be one where she would be a great person if someone needs that down payment assistance. They have the systems already set up in place to do it. So that, you know, it's education. Who in our community does this type of stuff? And getting the people to them.
But I think the rehabilitation loans, right, what we're talking about is getting a home that is to a level that's an existing home, that getting that home to the point where it is, would qualify for a VHA or a VA loan. That's not gonna involve a remodeler or a developer.
Right, and I was just speaking in general as far as some of the challenges of dealing with FHE. I wasn't speaking specifically, I'm lockstep with you on this. If you-
Yeah.
These are the requirements to get this financed through VA, and we provide that, very simple.
And I also think it stretches.
I mean,
The
the owners
dollars.
can do the work themselves as long as it's inspected. And,
Yep.
you know, there's no criteria on that.
Yeah, we seem to be filling the gap need.
Yeah, as long as it isn't just a pure duplicate of the state program.
Right.
We'll find the differences.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, is there anything, to her point, that precludes